Welcome back, everybody. Hello, Diego. How are you today?
Hey Diana, doing great here. How are you?
I'm very good as well. Today is episode 4, if I remember correctly, of a series of podcast episodes regarding um, everything that you need to know regarding setting up a home studio or an office studio. Um, to recapitulate, a couple of weeks ago, we discussed three main topics. Okay, mainly three topics. We extended a little bit more the topic discussed regarding cameras. We also talked about hardware, the recommended hardware to use for our studios. We discussed a little bit about cameras, tripods, not cameras, I'm sorry, tripods, um, um, lamps, if I remember correctly. Oh, microphone. That's what I was going to say. Types of microphones. And also we discussed a little bit how to navigate through the space that we have available in order to create our desired content. So before talking about our new topic of discussion, um, Diego, is there anything else that you would like to add regarding what we discussed on our last episode? It could either be about cameras or hardware or the space that we have available in order to record.
Sure. So I consider that for every single one of those three topics, there's a ton of subtopics on which to expand, either because of
Mm-hmm.
the specificity on equipment. For example, if we go deep into cameras, we have mirrorless. We have a lot of to talk when it comes to recording with cell phones. And we also have a ton of materials to talk about when it comes to cinema cameras. And inside mirrorless, there are different brands, there are different price tags, there are different. There is a lot. Like there's really a lot, and that is only based on equipment. There is also the possibility
Yeah.
for us to expand inside of those three main topics, based on use case scenarios. Uh, For instance, I was watching the masterclass from Marques Brownlee, a very successful YouTuber who has
Mm-hmm.
a masterclass at masterclass.com. And uh, the type of suggestions that he made very often regarded to his use case, which is being a reviewer of technology. And what it popped up to my mind when watching him was that uh, recommendations and the overall conversation changes a lot when it comes to talking about being a reviewer of physical objects, when creating documentary work, when creating podcasts like this one that we're uh, recording right now. So uh, there are many different use cases, and therefore, getting back to your initial question, if I wanted to add something else about those three topics, I definitely do. And I'm actually very open to get deeper and deeper into that in further episodes, based on perhaps a whole series talking about those things in regards of pricing, maybe about use cases, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
about equipment and brands. So, this being said, maybe we can move forward with that other introductory topic that you wanted to talk about a little while ago, uh, a few minutes ago, actually, and that related to computers and software.
Yes, absolutely. Of course, what you said before, there's so much to say about what we have already discussed. So that's another thing that I wanted to say. Those are topics that will be further developed in future episodes, especially what you mentioned about pricing, because we haven't discussed so much about pricing. We have been reserving that information for upcoming episodes. So I think that's going to be very interesting. But now, talking about this, is something that I consider is the, I don't know, like the heart. I don't know how to call it, like the heart of the editing process.
Yeah.
Um, Again, we could have our camera set up, our hardware set up, our space already established, but we need a computer. Okay, we need a computer to work with, and we need to make a smart decision regarding what computer to use. There's something that I read before somewhere, and I really liked it. It says behind every great video is a powerful computer. I like that when I read it. Your choice of computer can significantly impact the quality and efficiency of your video editing process. Um, of course, it all depends on what you need and what your post production's needs are. But Diego, talking about computers in a very general manner, what do you think is the minimum system requirements a person should keep in mind when shopping a computer for the purpose of post production and the editing of videos?
Sure. Okay, so prior to talking about post-production, I would like to very briefly mention that a computer might be necessary for the actual recording process.
Mhm.
For this scenario that we have been talking about ever since the beginning of this series of podcasts, because again, for those who might be just watching us for the first time, this specific series of conversations relating how to establish your home or office studio for recording is targeting podcast, app talks, conversations, interviews, remote interviews, by the way, kind of production. Thus, something that we haven't touched yet is that for this kind of remote production, you will likely require, it is not that you will always require it, but you will likely require a computer to which you can plug this microphone over here, that camera over there, into that computer in order to be able to send that signal to the application that you're using for the actual conversation with the other one, who is in any other place around the world and who is having the very same approach. That person is also plugging their camera and microphone to their computer and recording, sending that signal to the cloud and whatever application that is being used. That application will likely run in a browser in your computer. So for that computer, and then again, it is not mandatory that you do that. You can totally record locally, pretending to be sending that signal to the other party, and just have a meeting. I don't know, throw it your cell phone or something like that. And
Mhm.
that's another approach. But again, if you consider to have a computer for this kind of workflow, for remotely talking with someone else across the internet, then that computer, my recommendation is that computer to be either a Windows or a Mac computer that can run Google Chrome. That's it. You really don't need anything else.
Mm.
You don't need that powerful of a computer. I mean, if you're able to have a phone call through that computer, through Skype or anything like that, that computer will work for you.
Yeah.
There's an mentioning Mac or Windows specifically, and I'm leaving outside things like Chrome OS in a Chromebook, or iPad OS in an iPad, or Android OS in an Android tablet. Is that For certain scenarios, you won't actually be able to plug both the camera and mic into the iPad, for instance, and opening Riverside FM or any other software for doing this kind of stuff, and being able to use those in the device. Not until iPad 16 at least. This is just impossible. It is not something you can talk about. And in others like Chrome, it is so cumbersome. It is not reliable at all. So yes, Mac or Windows will do better for you. Oh, Linux. I'm sorry, Linux for Linux people. I forget about them. But yes, like standard desktop OS will totally do for you with any computer that is capable of managing with fluency a video conference call. Okay. That is the end of my brief mention on the equipment that you require for producing this kind of video production. Now let's go with actual post-production.
The post-production.
So
Exactly.
So it might be good to split this topic into scenarios, use cases for post-production or workflows for post-production. So first of all, if you do not do post-production, you don't have to care at all about a computer that can do post-production. It might seem obvious, but if you're just recording and someone else is taking care of that, then you really do not need much else. Okay, what if you do care about post-production? And what if your kind of post-production is efficient to be done into a computer? Again, I'm trying to kind of enclosure this topic for this specific scenario of this kind of video production. Because if you're recording with your cell phone, either shorts or this kind of video in which you're on the move and you record yourself, you're an influencer who requires to record very quickly yourself. Chances are that the best workflow for you is to edit that into your cell phone and upload that to your whatever places in which you're getting your content towards, to do that within your cell phone. So I will leave that scenario outside this equation because we are talking again about this post-production, which you're sitting in your desk, likely talking or having conversations of any kind with others through the internet or maybe in person. But yeah, it's not that you record, edit, and upload within your cell phone. Okay, so this being said, you are the person who is doing post-production. There are many considerations to be taken here, but I will start with one simple but very important recommendation, and that would be don't let yourself to be infected with the geared acquisition syndrome. Syndrome? That's not a word in English, is it?
It's syndrome? Yeah?
Syndrome, I'm sorry. That necessity of
Alright.
having the best computer, the fastest computer, the latest
Oh,
computer,
okay.
and so on. Because that is
Oh.
something in which that's something that's very easy to fall into. Yeah, so that will be my first recommendation. Like, try to look at things with that in mind, because it's very easy to accidentally fall off into that necessity of getting very expensive equipment and potentially non-necessary equipment to edit. Okay, let's talk about scenarios now. I'm going to get a bit technical here. So let me just talk about potential things that can influence what type of equipment you require. So one of those potential areas or things that can influence the equipment that you require is the footage. It's not necessarily how heavy the footage is, but a mixture of the footage, codecs, and weight. So it
Okay.
happens that different configurations on cameras and different brands of cameras can affect how difficult it is for your computer to process the footage. There are many things to consider here. For example, the fact of them producing in 1080 or in 4K in terms of resolution can affect how difficult it is for your computer to manage that. That's not all. And as a matter of fact, it is not really something that the thing that can affect the most how difficult it is for your computer to digest footage. There's also the color depth. It happens that footage is having different levels of pre-processing into the camera in terms of the color and like how much information there is in each single pixel of your footage in the camera in terms of color. And there it can be something like a camera can produce 8-bit footage, and that is very digestible footage, or it can be 10-bit, which is harder to process. It also consumes more space, and it can go even to 12 and so on. With 12, we're talking about cinema cameras in RAW format. With 10, we're talking about very capable mirrorless cameras and cinema cameras with not necessarily RAW, but log footage. I'm going to explain that in a little bit. But anyways, there's also the color depth. That can also affect how heavy and how difficult it is for a computer to process the footage in post-production. Then there's also whether the footage is in Rec 709 or in log format. And what that means is if it is sort of, if the camera is already doing the process of color grading or baking the footage for you, or if the camera is delivering that to you kind of not already baked for you to do that into post-production. And that will also affect how difficult it is to process that in your computer in post. Then there's also the format, the codec. Like different cameras are having different codecs for different combinations of bit depth and other factors. And those codecs can be more or less difficult to process on a computer. Sony, for instance, is kind of infamous for how difficult it is for some computers to process that footage. There are other codecs. There are files that are ProRes. That is a codec by Apple that is easier to process, especially on Apple computers, but not necessarily on Apple computers. Anyways, there are also different codecs, and those are, I mean, DJI with their drones is having different codecs than when you're talking about raw footage for cinema. You're having RED, you're having many possibilities, and that is also something that can consume resources on your computer to take the source codec and to translate it into something that you're editing with. Okay, all of this being said, that is going to make variate the requirements of processing power of your computer. But there is another factor as well to decide. And that will be, what do you really need with your workflow? So all of that bit depth and raw formats and stuff, that is all for people who are color grading the footage. That is a part of the post-production process on which you, as a colorist, take non-baked or partially baked footage from your camera and do what your camera usually do into the device. You do that in post-production manually. What you get when you're having a non-baked footage into your computer or into your hands is something that looks kind of grayish, like if it had no color. And the reason
Mm.
why is that it you are the person who is responsible for grading that footage in order to make it look as you want. And that takes time. That it's not only about research. A extraordinary computer is not going to magically transform you into a professional colorist. And that is the reason why we see many YouTubers who are having extraordinary cameras, extraordinary computers, and their footage just looks poor. Because it doesn't matter how big of a computer you have and how big of a camera you have. If you don't know, and you don't, or you either don't have the time, because that is a process that takes a lot of time. If you can't color grade, then it's not worth it. So, okay, those two factors that are important for decision on which computer to go for are going to drive me to mention the following. I will recommend a workflow for producing this specific kind of content, which is a conversational and long format video. I will advise to choose equipment that you can, equipment with which, after certain initial and set forever configurations, you can leave everything to be done into the camera so that you can record, you can take the footage, and the editing process does not involve to do any sort of color grading. That is my advice. Because, color grading for a movie that is 2 hours long take months of teams of colorists, professional colorists, to work every 2 seconds clip. You're not a professional colorist, you're not a team, and supposedly, if this is the scenario in which people who are not having time want the most efficient possible workflow, you don't have the time to be caring about color grading in a 1 hour long video. So what I think you want to do is to configure that into the camera so that everything is ready to go in terms of color grading in post-production. Okay, let's just finalize this about color grading with one example. Both of our cameras are the same brand, same model. They are set to the very exact same configurations. We're using the same lamps. We are using the same kelvins for our lighting. What I mean is that we can both control with this little device whether our lights are more bluish or more yellowish, and both of us are having the very same temperature of light. We are having the cameras positioned at sort of the very same distance between us. We're using the same lens.
At a very similar distance, yeah.
Exactly. Okay, I talked about lens and distance. I wanted to talk only about color grade. So forget about that for a second. But anyways, we are using the very same cameras, equipment, configurations in terms of what affect color, so that our final takes are matched into the camera. No color grading required. It doesn't mean that we can't care about color grading, but one potentially necessary reason why we would like to do that is because maybe we look so different in our takes that it gets distracting for the viewers, right? And
Mhm.
we won't like that. Or maybe it will be about the footage not looking exactly as we wanted. We might want it to have a bluish tint to our takes for all of our productions, because that is the sort of the look and feel that we wanted. So if it was that scenario, then we onto this type of cameras, those are cinema cameras, we can sort of do the color grading process, not in post, but in pre-production. We can take a shoot, take that into our computer, or have colors to do that. Then tell that colors to color grade our take to whatever parameters we might want. Then that colors is going to export a little file that is named a LUT, LUT, I'm sorry, lookup table. And then we can take that file into the camera and let know the camera, okay, you will use this color grading parameters for shooting new footage. And the camera is going to process that into the camera. And we won't ever have to do color grading in post because we did that in pre. That is,
Yeah.
for instance, a scenario that we also use when having different camera models. For instance, when we record with Carlos, Carlos uses a cinema camera that is a different brand, different model. He uses a Blackmagic Cinema Pocket 4K camera. They should
Right.
get the name easier to pronounce. Anyways, so because of he's having a different brand model, the color science of that camera is different from this one, and also it is his scenario. He uses a different lighting setup. So when having our cameras next to his, the footage is going to look weirdly different. And again, we don't want to distract viewers, and also it is, in my opinion, some sort of quality badge to be able to be consistent across different takes for the same series. I mean that's like watching a a frame of The Lord of the Rings next to a scene of Barbie, and they look really different, or Matrix, which is
Mhm.
all pretty much green, you know. It doesn't match. It doesn't belong to. So that is another reason why we like to do color grading. But if you don't
Yeah.
have to do that in post, if you have this kind of setup, and specifically this kind of setup, you cannot do that if your scenario is variating all the time, because color grading won't work. I mean, it won't work to have the very same color grading for all shots if it is not the very same scenario. So what we want to do with Carlos is to do that process. Color grade his shot in his scenario, take a
Right.
LUT file from the computer to the camera, then tell the camera to use that configuration of color for all future shots, and we're done. All of the three cameras, despite of not being the same brand, and despite of not having the same scenario and same lighting conditions, all of the three cameras are going to send a match, uh, uh, sort of scene in terms of color grading. Okay, so for that workflow that I just mentioned, you don't need a crazy powerful computer to do color grading, because you're not going to be doing color grading. So just to get started, if you both, I mean, if it is a podcast of 2, 3, 4 people, and they all have the very same camera brands and models, and they configure those to the very same specs, you won't have to do anything to match up the cameras. Oh, of course, and they have to have the same lighting conditions. They don't have to do
Exactly.
anything to match those cameras. So there's no need in having, I don't know, a MacBook Pro with 32 gigs of RAM and 32 cores of processing power for video and so on and so forth, or the latest NVIDIA card for a Microsoft Windows computer. It's not necessary at all, because you won't likely be doing color grading, and that is one of the things that can consume a lot if you do color grading with a heavy footage, codec, and file, which is what I mentioned before in the area of the file characteristics. Okay, I have two things so far. How difficult is the file to process, and what is your workflow for color grading? Now, there's also one other thing to consider. Okay, let's imagine that you accept to go with the workflow of either having the same camera and lighting conditions, or having set up, and again, this is a set and forget process, having set up a color configuration on all the cameras so that all cameras match in production. Okay, so let's say that you go with that workflow. Then what you will require to edit your footage is a computer that at the most, a computer that is capable of taking care on perhaps multicam footage, and also perhaps also taking care on cutting shots. Like that's the most that you will likely require. Okay, let me just make a parenthesis here. Remember the first area that related to how difficult it is for your computer to process the file. I mentioned at some point whether it is 8 bits or 10 bits in terms of depth of the depth of color. Well, 10-bit is only benefiting you if you're color grading. From that point on, it doesn't make any difference at all, ever. So you will want 8 bits. So if you already did the color grading in pre-production, you're only going to require your camera to give you 8 bits. And you're only going to require your camera to give you a Rec 709. What I mean is a baked footage, not a log footage, because you're not going to do color grading. At the end of the day, the thing is, if you follow that workflow, your camera is going to give you a very easy to work with file. So, okay, so what you will likely require in a computer is the ability to process maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 multi-cam videos. For instance, this conversation is having 2 camera videos, yours and mine. But maybe it is a podcast or a conversation of 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, or maybe it is a conversation of 2 people, but each person is having 2 camera angles. I mean, 2 cameras per person, maybe one in front, maybe one slightly at your right or left. But anyways, so you will likely require a computer that can process that. And also, you will likely require a computer that can just cut a scene and remove some part of the footage and so on and so forth. So what computer is that? If you are a Windows person, you will likely be fine with a computer that is having around 32 gigs of RAM. That will be something I will consider to be very good. By the way, I'm not talking about the cheapest possible option, because I am assuming that you want to have. I'm assuming that you don't just want to be exactly into the edge of what can work and cannot. Like, if for you to have some sort of room, but I am also assuming you don't want to pay for unnecessary stuff. So for Windows, I will recommend to have 32 gigs of RAM. Not at least, just 32. Like more than that is not something you will need. 16 is, in my opinion, something that can deliver but can leave you a sort of in
It
danger
would be
zone on
lacking
Windows.
16? Yes.
I mean,
So the
16
recommended
will
one will be
totally
32.
yeah. Because again, I don't want to
Mm,
tell you like the minimum you can go for.
mm.
Yes, 16 is going to take you there, no problem. But I mean, if you can pay $100 in addition or $200 more to have peace of mind, then go for it. No, 64 is just necessary. It won't make any sort of difference. Okay, so I would recommend to have a 32 gigs of RAM computer. I would recommend you to have a NVIDIA, which card, by the way. Maybe, I mean, it's not necessary. Yeah, I mean, it's not necessary for you to have the latest and most powerful NVIDIA card. Um, I'll probably go for uh, what could I recommend you? Yeah, like an RTX 4090 is just not what I consider to be necessary for this process. If you can get a
Mm.
30 series NVIDIA card, that will be much more than enough. And anything that is slightly under that will totally do for you. Because again, you're not doing color grading. But I don't want to tell you to scheme into and buying that computer. Uh, what else do we have? Okay, so and by the way, this computer that I'm describing right now is the most that you will require accordingly to the different uh, post-production workflows that I'm going to mention as follows. So this first scenario is the most that you potentially can require, depending on what software and post-production process you go for. Okay, so back to this topic. So I would recommend to have no more than a 30 RTX series NVIDIA card. More than that is just necessary, totally unnecessary, and you can totally do your totally keep your purpose with any RTX between 20 and 30 series. And that is even for a laptop. Like, I'm not even talking about a desktop computer for which those NVIDIA cards are much powerful because they're having different configurations due to the higher capacity of receiving power and doing thermal management on desktop computers. Anyways,
That's
so
important to know,
that will be
yes. I mean, whether
yeah, that
to use PC or a laptop computer, yeah.
yeah, totally. But then again, I'm talking about a laptop. So on a
Mhm.
desktop, you will have to I mean, if you have the very same series of NVIDIA card on your desktop, the less you are to worry because it is going to perform the better. So I
Mm.
am providing you with the laptop mention. If you go for desktop, if you consider the very same for desktop, you're safe. Okay, what if you're a Mac person? Then I will tell. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. I forgot about capacity, storage capacity. Okay, something that I think you require, totally, absolutely require, is SSD. Um, some fast SSD for your computer. I mean, hard drives are just not used nowadays, anyways. Just in case you have to have an SSD. About capacity, you will likely need anything from 250 gigs of memory. Less than that
Okay.
is going to get you into troubles very soon. And again, this is for the scenario on which you will require the most. Okay. The reason why storage is important is because depending on what your solution for managing footage is in terms of storage, the storage will be into your computer, and I mean, you will run out of space if you're having many episodes of long format video into your computer. to be edited at the
Right.
same time. It is not like you will save forever footage in your computer. I'm just talking about the footage that you're having temporarily into your computer for editing purposes. So less than 250 gigs is danger zone for me. More than that is what I will consider for this scenario in which you will require the most. What else do we have here? The processor. So editing video is generally something that will consume a lot of resources from your graphic cards, the NVIDIA card that I just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But let's assume that if you're buying a computer that, I mean, I'm not talking about you are sort of assembling the computer with your own hands. Like you're just buying a laptop, right? It is already there. It's already assembled when you get your hands into it. So I will assume that if you're going with a 30 series NVIDIA card, then you will likely be in the realm of a 11th generation of Intel processors or something similar from AMD. So I will not talk about any specificity in terms of processor, because I mean, try to base your decision in the graphic cars, in the graphic car, and you will likely be good with the processor that is next to it in the computer. Because I mean, manufacturers try to match things in a balanced way. That they're not going with a very old and incapable processor matched with a brand new and super powerful graphic card. So it's likely you're likely going to find some balance there. Okay, about screen. People tend to care a lot about screen technology. I mean, there are screens that are pretty bad, but if you're going either a laptop or you're just buying an external monitor, because of your footage is already color graded in pre-production, you will likely not require to care at all about the quality of the screen in terms of how reliable are the colors produced on that screen. For instance, what I'm having in front of me is the BenQ SW3200 monitor. This is a professional monitor for color grading. And I work
Mm-hmm.
with this monitor configured to represent a Rec 709 color space that allows me to color grade with a ton of confidence. But that is something that I require when color grading alone. There's no need for me to have this monitor if I am not doing that process. If that process was already taken care of, there's no real need on me to do anything. So, yeah, a monitor that is calibrated for professional colorists is not necessary if you're not going to do this at all. Okay, so any monitor will really do for you. Don't care about it. The monitor decision will be better taken on your side in terms of how productive you are based on whatever you do in your industry area. But to be honest, it's not going to make any sort of difference in post production with this specific workflow that I'm suggesting. Okay, this is important. And if you are going to take care in color grading, prior to worrying about the monitor, you should probably worry about learning a lot of stuff to become a colorist. So don't worry
I know.
all that much about the monitor. Okay, so on Mac, I will suggest any M1 computer with 16 gigs of memory. you can totally go with an 8 gigs computer. But just to be safe, 16 is a overall good suggestion. I mean, if I had $200 extra to spare on those, I will totally go with 8 additional gigs. But that is the most that you will require. Again, the most. And especially, I am talking about an M1, not an Intel, an M1 computer. That can be a MacBook Air, that can be an iMac like that one that you're having right now. So any of those will do. Will absolutely do for what we're mentioning here. Okay, so this roof on computer equipment for this workflow, what scenario is that for? Because I have repeatedly mentioned that this is like the most that you will require. So this is for the scenario in which you're using DaVinci Resolve for editing. You're using Adobe Premiere, or you're using, if you're on Mac, you're using, I mean, if you're on Mac, any Mac will do with that software. If you're using Final Cut Pro X. By the way, if you're using Final Cut, really any Mac will do those. I don't know how they do it, but that software is like magic. With anything you throw at it, it will work even in old computers. So anyways, this is for those scenarios on which you're using that kind of software for post-production. So why is that those scenarios will require the most computer, or this most computer that I mentioned on this workflow? Because you're searching the footage into your computer. You're loading that footage with your production, your post-production software. And depending on that software, you might require to do a little things here and there to optimize the footage when you're editing for it to run smoothly. It is like more professional software. You will require a higher or a stiffer learning curve with that software. And also kind of the most powerful computer with that software. But because if you're not doing color grading, you're not doing special effects or anything like that, you won't likely require more than I'm just mentioning. No. Let's go to tier number 2 of computers, and that will depend on the software. What if you're using something like Descript? This is a much lighter software and easier to use software. It takes care on a lot of optimizations on the video so that it always run smoothly, and you don't have to care about pretty much anything. You won't even have to care about surging the footage into your computer. So if you're having just 250 gigs of memory in your computer, that is just fine for any sort of long, short, medium format video. And that is the case with you, actually. It doesn't even really matter if you're having 8 gigs of RAM, because the software will take care of a lot of stuff in order for you to produce
it's true.
smoothly. Exactly. So, with a software such as this one, the footage, when you throw the footage into the software transcodes it into a very easy to digest footage codec. It then uploads that into the cloud, and it also serves proxies. Proxies are like lower resolution file formats that you can use when editing so that everything runs smoothly. So they use proxies and they automate I mean, you don't even have to know anything about what I'm talking about. They do it all in the background. But the software tries to make it very, very easy on your computer to edit. So for those using those kind of software, the computer that I just described is going to work absolutely beautifully. In a computer that is slightly um, lowered in specs than the one that I described is going to do with that as well. For instance, if you're on Mac, I will recommend a game to go for an M1, but you don't necessarily have to have 16 gigs of RAM. You can do with 8, and you don't really have to care all that much about having more than, or even having a little less than 250 gigs of storage, because uh, the script is going to take all the footage into the cloud, and it is going to download proxies that are very light as you require them. You don't even have to care about, and you don't have to do anything. It will, it
Oh,
will
really?
delete the delayed footage that you're not using from previous videos from your computer, and it is going to download from the cloud ones that you're about to use. That is why when you open a project, sometimes it says like downloading footage or material, something like that. So with that software, that M1 8 gigs of RAM Mac will do totally fine. And as for Windows, you don't really require all that much of processing power or graphic card power. So any similar spec card as a, I don't know, an NVIDIA uh, RTX 20,000 series, I believe that will do pretty fine for you. Yeah, like it's not like you require a ton of resources to move that up. Okay, this being said, let's move now to another tier of computer that you might require, and that again depends on the workflow and the software. What if your editing process is not taking any software that you can use on your computer, but you're doing all of that on the cloud? For instance, if you're recording into a software like Riverside, you do have the option, and this is kind of very recent, but you have the option. Oh, by the way, I'm sure that Riverside and all other similar software solutions will continue to do this. So you have the option of editing right within your Chrome browser, and all of the
Yes.
editing process is taken care on servers and resources, machine resources, uh, on the cloud by Riverside, so that you can pretty much do this even in a Chromebook or any other computer. So in that scenario, it really doesn't matter. Like, you will be better to care about what your computer requirements are for the specific type of work that you do in your industry area, rather than caring about that for video editing, because the processing requirements are going to be taken care by the software in the cloud in some server, whatever they're processing all of that. And what you're seeing in your screen is just like the product of all of that uh, after being rendered in some server and delivered to your through the internet. So those are, in my opinion, 3 tiers that will let you know what kind of post-production software you might require. Let me add just another one here. That will be, what if you have an iPad like this one over here? And I mean, you want to edit on your iPad for whatever reason. Maybe you're a person who travels, or you like to sit on your couch and relax as you're doing the post-production for certain uh, projects. So I will argue, and we have the very same kind of process for color grading, which means we don't do color grading. That is all being taken care of by the pre-production process. So
Mm.
I will argue that any 2019 iPad will be able to run smoothly with a multicam video of 2 streams on applications
Whoa.
like yeah,
That's
totally.
almost
Because
5
again,
years ago. Is that so?
yes,
Is it
absolutely.
still
Because
that
first of all,
efficient? Okay.
yes, it's very efficient. First of all, the format of video, because again, because we're not doing post production, and and we don't need 10-bit color depth video, and we likely don't require to have 4K. 1080p is pretty much everything that we require. Because of all of that, we we're being very gentle with the device. Also, depending on the application, it will totally do. For instance, let me just recall the name of this application. Um, where are you?
What type of
Uh,
app are you talking about?
yeah, there's this video editing application. I just don't remember its name. I'm trying to look at this on this iPad.
Mm-hmm.
Let me for a second. What's that name? Okay, so let me just start with the most demanding one instead. Um, very recently, the iPad had updates in terms of the developers uh, of those applications, and iPad got able to run a simplified version of DaVinci Resolve. That is a software
Mm-hmm.
editing tool that runs in Windows, Mac, and Linux. And it was able to run that. I believe that M1 processors can run DaVinci Resolve on iPads. I believe that also A16 processors can do that. Don't quote me on that though. But anyways, that is a possibility. For that, I believe you will likely require a sort of not the newest iPads, but an iPad that is from the M1 and onwards. Very recently as well, iPad had another update in which it started to run the Apple software for video editing named Final Cut Pro. That is again a simplified version of Final Cut Pro for desktop. And if I am not mistaken, that also runs only on M1 processors, but please don't quote me on that. I'm not certain about if it also runs on the A16 iPad processors from 2019. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's also this software that I can remember. I'm just taking half a minute to look at for this on my iPad. Sorry. So there's DaVinci Resolve. There's Final Cut Pro. First, on support. Sorry, I'm having 100 applications here installed, and I'm just trying to find this one. It's a very popular one, by the way. Puff. I wasn't able to remember or to find out that application, but anyways, I'm certain, absolutely certain about iPads from the 2018 model can run onto that application,
Wow.
multicam video, for at least 2 streams very smoothly, and that can also be a tool that you can use for editing this kind of video productions. So yes, if you're into iPad, I'll argue a used $600 iPad will totally
Will
get you
that
there
work
for
as well?
editing there.
Wow,
Absolutely.
I
No, it
didn't know
doesn't
that.
mean that that is an ideal workflow. I will argue that for long format videos like this one, the script is just like magic. But yes, if for whatever reason your kind of approach for video editing will be to use an iPad, I don't know, maybe you're traveling a lot, and while you're traveling, the iPad is very very convenient. It can fit pretty much anywhere, and you will likely also edit
Absolutely.
locally. So if you're using the script, you will likely require a
Absolutely.
connection to internet. But if you're having your footage into the iPad and you're traveling, that can totally do. And again, if your taste is that of editing into that device.
But you're talking about exclusively about iPads, or you can also transfer that into regular tablets. Are tablets uh, able to do that as well?
Kind of. Okay, I recalled the
Yeah.
name of that application that I wasn't able to remember a while ago. I'm sorry. That is named
Hmm.
LumaFusion. LumaFusion is that application that I was just referring to. So
Luma Fusion. All right.
LumaFusion. If I'm not mistaken, LumaFusion uh very recently got available on the Google Play Store for Android tablets. Though very recently, because it has existed in an iPad since, I don't know, a ton of years ago. So mm, I I have not tried that application on iPad. I'm sorry, on Android tablets, but I will expect that it will be more robust on iPads because it was born on iPad first. Second, because there are less iPads on the market, iPad models on the market there are tablets from Android. I don't know. There are dozens of Android tablets models, whereas iPads they are pretty. Uh, there are fewer. And third, because iPad is having better processors than Android tablets in terms of raw power. So I will expect that specific software to behave better on iPad. Also, if you're referring
Mhm.
to Final Cut Pro, it only works on iPad because it's from Apple. And if you're referring to DaVinci Resolve for iPad, it it was very recently released for iPad and only for iPad. Uh, I I will argue. I mean, I don't know, but this is often a reason why we see applications to be released first or even only on iPads or iPhones, and that is because the market is bigger for iPads than other tablets, specific tablets. Also because the Android tablets are numerous and they're not as powerful. So I believe that that might be the reason why Blackmagic decided to release uh, this software only for iPad, or perhaps they will release it for Android tablets as well. I don't know. Anyways, I'm not really suggesting you to use an iPad for editing. All that I'm saying is that if you are into iPad and you think that the workflow on iPad will work for you, then yes, an iPad can also be something that you can use. Okay, just to finalize my description on computers that you require. Oh, by the way, iPad also can allow you with. I mean, there are tons of apps on iPad and also on Google Play for Android tablets that can allow you to edit video. I just mentioned three that are kind of very professional for being tablets. And but there are many more. iMovie is one, another one that you can find out on iPad. There are tons others on Android. So there are a ton of possibilities. Okay, so back to which computer. I will finalize with this last mention. I believe that many applications are getting into the cloud. And the script is one of those because last week they released a um, a beta on Descript Cloud. That is, you being able to use Descript on a Google Chrome tab, running all of that into your browser, all of the processing being done remotely into Descript's servers, which means that you don't even need. I mean, Descript is already light for your computer, but it seems now that you can run it even into a Chromebook. It's not to say that Chromebooks can't be powerful. What I mean is that you don't even really need anything else but a browser tab to run Descript, and that's interesting because maybe you don't have to care at all about what computer. Maybe you can just grab any computer that is going according to your workflow on your day-to-day work on your industry area. And if you can have Chrome, maybe you can do the video editing that you require. All of that is thanks to being able to manage some things on pre-production, like color grading.
Right. So right now in the year 2023, but this is based only on your own opinion, Diego. So if you have to select one specific computer and more or less the cost that it would imply to buy it, which one would you choose for the specific needs of a person who needs to work on post-production and video editing?
Okay. So are we talking about this workflow that I'm proposing that will not require color grading, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay. So if I were into Mac, I will buy a MacBook Air, 15 inches, and it is not going to really affect the things in terms of capabilities having 15 inches. It's just that I would prefer having a slightly bigger screen just for viewing things more comfortably. I
Well,
will edit on the
I have to
script.
say that. Yes,
Okay.
I will have to say that a big screen really facilitates the process of post-production. A big screen lets you work more comfortably, but as well lets you see the whole picture when you are editing. So that's something that I would recommend myself. I don't have as much as experience as you have, but I will say that a big screen will facilitate the process a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually like a big screen for pretty much everything that I produce. I mean, even writing documents or managing spreadsheets, it's much more comfortable having a bigger
Yeah.
screen. And I believe that once you get used to it, going back to a smaller screen is kind of difficult because your
Yes,
productivity across
it is.
many things that you do is boost. Okay, so if I were to, I mean, this is sort of a personal taste. I'm rather changing my answer to this. If I were a Mac user, I will choose any M1 or more computer. So that if you're moving around, and maybe that will be a MacBook Air. If you are moving around that you like to have sort of the touch bar, you might want a MacBook Pro with a touch bar.
Mm.
If you were on a desk, you might want an iMac like that you're having. If you're on a desk but you're wanting to plug in your own external monitor, you might want a Mac Mini. So all of those that I have mentioned are M1 processors. And if you're wanting a MacBook Pro, you will have a M1 Pro processor. And so if the M1 is enough, anything going forward is going to be more than enough. Okay, what if I'm going Windows? It's difficult here. I won't really have any sort of recommendation. Like what I mentioned about Mac is a recommendation. But on Windows, I can't recommend anything. I don't want you
Why
to
not?
think that because there are many models. I mean,
Right.
because of the Mac models are much reduced. I was able to answer you any M1 or upwards,
Yeah.
but on
Like
Windows
Mac is one brand,
is
Apple is one brand,
exactly,
but PC, there are so
and
many brands
they're having
associated.
few
Yeah.
models, right? So if we're
Yes.
going Windows, it is not like I can't recommend in terms of don't do it. It's rather about I can't recommend something specific because there are many models, there are many brands, and each of those are subject to what you like, what brand you're feeling connected to. So yes, with Windows, it's not it is really not as easy as an easy recommendation. I mean, there's
I
Huawei, there's
understand.
Samsung, there is
Yeah.
there
Uh-huh.
are tons of brands and tons of different models. There's desktop, there is laptop,
Absolutely.
there are hybrids. There is a lot. But yeah, I won't be able to talk about any specific computer. So anything that you like that
No, I
is
understand what
sort
you're
of
saying.
slightly capable, we will do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what you mentioned before. More than a brand, it's about looking for the minimum system requirements in order
Yeah, totally.
to be able to do your job more than the
Mhm.
brand itself. And yes, I understand that now. And it
Mm,
would be very
totally.
difficult to pinpoint a very specific type of computer, a PC computer, when talking about these specific needs. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, there
And
is so much to talk about when regarding computers, when talking about computers, because uh, this is the essence of the work, and we know that technology. Again, I keep on saying this. Again, technology and apps and everything that gravitates towards this is advancing so fast. So perhaps in the very near future, we will only need a computer in order to do everything that we need to do. Um, but still, one last question, because
mhm.
I'm pretty sure right now that with everything that you have said, everything that you have said today, I'm sorry, we still have lots of material for another episode regarding computers. So, one final thing, one last question that I would like to ask you would be, um, in your particular case, you are a person who enjoys working with technology, studying technology, knowing about the newest trends, etc., etc. But for business owners, people who need to create content for their own brand, um, do you think it's beneficial to know how to edit videos, or do you think that it's better for them to hire another person to take care of the post production of their own videos?
Good question. Okay. Um, so let's start with the beginning. If you're a business owner, chances are of you not having the time to care about this.
Exactly.
So even if I mean it's a difficult question because we do provide this service, and I don't want my answer to be contaminated
Biased.
or biased. Exactly.
Yes.
So I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible. If
Good.
you're a business owner, you will probably not want to invest time into this kind of activity because you're likely to have much value to provide on 1 hour of work in other areas than
Mhm.
editing video. And editing video can be a very time consuming task. So if you're a business owner, maybe what you want to do is to focus on strategy, on content. What I mean is the following. No one,
Yeah.
not no one, but very few people into your organization is having the very same uh, level of knowledge and expertise and experience, so as to be able to share valuable content with your audience. And certainly, no one outside your organization is going to have that to share with your audience. It's to be you. So maybe instead of focusing on editing the last week podcast or interview or whatever, you will probably be better to be writing a strategy about what the next episode is going to be about, whom I'm going to be interviewing, or with which teammate I'm going to be talking about what. That is my belief. No, I have said probably. If you don't like video editing or anything of this, if this is something that really doesn't catch your eye, my probably is going to be turned into a don't do it ever. No, if you like this, yes, probably you won't be good to do this. No. You might want to rely on some internal person in your team to do this. To produce in house. But definitely, or probably you don't want to do that yourself, because maybe you're just so busy to do this that it's going to be a waste of your time when you can do more on other areas.
Absolutely. Well, there you have it. Okay. Diego, thank you so much for your insights today.
My
I'm pretty
pleasure.
sure that we're going to continue talking about this topic in our next episode. Um, Perhaps we will be able to talk about what you just mentioned, which I think it's a great topic of discussion. Which is how to create content, how to come up with ideas for example, podcast episodes. It in our case, it's an ever evolving process. Every time that we hold discussions, we always come up with great and new ideas that we can discuss in our episodes. So that will be a great topic of discussion for another episode as well. Um, so what I also mentioned last episode, don't forget to subscribe, okay? And also I want to add something more. Um, be sure to visit our website, okay? Our website will be in our description box down below. For more information on our service where we can help you, of course, edit your videos. So thank you so much for watching us today. I'll see you soon. So thank you, Diego. Bye bye.
Thank you, Dana. Bye bye.